there, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of Spooktober. We're the Scaryish podcast. I'm Robin Grace of San Andreas, and Adam's tired because it's 3 a.m. So today, keeping up with the spooky theme for October, I'm going to be telling you guys about a haunted manor across the pond. What are you doing?
Right on. I'm going to be covering a disaster. It was the third most voted for topic during our Patreon poll. So that is what I'm going to be covering. I'm also still reeling a little bit from my last place finish in the pumpkin carving contest that took place on Sunday. Thank you to everyone who came out to watch. I will say, looking back at some of the pumpkins from years past, I definitely took on something very complex this year and blew it out my ass. It did not work out. Are
you saying that because I posted the picture of a couple of our pumpkins that we did last year?
And I got memories of a couple of my pumpkins from not last year, but 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I've done Ghostbusters. I've done just a normal face. I've had some basic, easier logos that I've incorporated into my pumpkin carving designs. So I was very high risk, and it did not work out.
I posted that memory of when I did the Snapchat logo. I was just like, I'm lazy. This is the year I'm lazy. It's a ghost, right? Snapchat, boom.
I couldn't remember which one I did that year, but it looked good. There was two pumpkins next to each other with weird faces that both looked good, and I was like, I did one of those, so I don't have to feel bad forever. But yeah, I wish I would have gone with the Ghostbusters logo. I've done that one before. It turned out really well. Ghostbusters is coming out November 19th. Also, so is Wheel of Time show. Just saying, if you're going to be watching Wheel of Time, pretty excited about that. But anyways.
It's twats.
Yeah, and then we're going to be releasing, my friend Garrett and I, and Faye actually is going to be participating here and there, are going to be releasing the Wheel of Time show about the Wheel of Time show, probably around November 22nd. It's actually already out there if you guys want to listen to the pilot episode, and then we have another episode that's going to drop here, and it's they're getting ready episodes, but once November 19th hits, we're going to do reactions to all the episodes. So pretty excited about that. I'm a huge Wheel of Time fan, so that coming out soon is sort of lifting my spirits. There's been a lot of promotional material for it, so since Sunday I've just been in this massive depressive state from failing pretty miserably.
Oh, no.
So yeah, we recorded the second episode for the prelim stuff for the Wheel of Time show about the Wheel of Time show, otherwise known as Twats. So excited about that. But anyways, enough about that stuff. I think we can go ahead and jump into our topics, and Robin, you're gonna be going first, so take it away.
All right, so supposedly this manor is one of the most haunted in Great Britain or the UK or whatever, right? And everybody always says that. Everybody always is like, oh, the most haunted in blah, 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 blah. So I'm going to say take all of this with a grain of salt because everyone thinks they're the most haunted wherever.
I mean, if you had a list of 200 of the most haunted places and you had number 200, you could still say it's one of the most haunted places.
See, and that's the thing that people should say is one of the most haunted places in wherever. But they're always like, the most haunted. But this piece of property, this structure, this manor is pretty well known. And it actually popped up a lot. I don't know if it's because I was actually researching it. That's why it popped up a lot. But I had honestly never even heard of it before tonight.
What's the name of it?
So I'm going to be doing Whimmering Manor. And it's in Portsmouth, England. It is supposedly the oldest structure still standing in that area. So it dates back the longest of all the structures there. But I'd never heard of it before. And I was so surprised because I started seeing all these lists, right? And they had this building on it and I'd never seen it before. I don't know why. It just randomly started popping up. Or
sometimes things escape you. Or it's like white noise because it's not what you're looking for at the time. So you don't pay attention to it. That'll happen sometimes. Sense.
But yeah, so I was really interested in looking all this stuff up. The land that it is currently built on used to be an ancient Roman settlement that existed from 43 AD to the year 408 AD. So, I mean, a lot of places, right? A lot of places all over the world, you could say, well, so-and-so used to live here back when the earth started or whatnot.
Back when the earth started.
I mean, this year I've learned that Las Vegas has one of the largest collections of fossil beds, and paleontological record geological record. It's really weird. And I had no idea about that.
Isn't it because we used to be an ocean?
Is it? I have no clue. All I
don't
know
That's
is
what I was asking you.
my senior design project is protecting these fossil beds, right? So it's really interesting because you don't really think about it. But this place used to be an ancient Roman settlement. The building's origins date back to its first owner, King Edward, in 1042. That was the year. After the Battle of Hastings in 1066, King William the Conqueror took over the, possession of the property until 1084.
Is William Longshanks?
I don't know.
Oh, I forget. You've never seen Braveheart.
Nope.
One of the kings in England was named Longshanks because he was tall, and that's what you just said about someone who had like long armor on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering. I'm going to look it up in the background. You keep going on.
All right. So over the centuries, this structure, it's been renovated, it's been updated, as with any structure, right? Houses these days, they need to get renovated, they need to get updated, modernized. Things change throughout time. And despite the exchange of hands and design, it still retains some building materials that date back to medieval and even the ancient Roman times, which is crazy, right?
It was not Longshanks.
Oh my God, thank you.
Just want to let everyone know.
I could not have lived if I did not
everyone
know
else
that.
was having a hard time paying attention just like me.
I've never seen Braveheart. I don't give a fuck. Even though Adam's probably like, you've never seen Braveheart? He always quotes...
No, I know that, so I'm not going to freak out about it yet again.
But he always quotes Braveheart, and I'm just like,
This is not true. Actually, what I'm quoting, I am not quoting Braveheart. I am quoting Basketball, which is quoting Braveheart.
Oh my God.
When they're like, love ya, I always have.
Okay, yeah, I've never seen Braveheart, so... but, continuing on, the basements of this building, aka cellars, I don't know what the difference is between a cellar and a basement. I'm sure there is one. Maybe there isn't, and I'm just whatever. But these cellars are thought to actually, like the building, the structure of these cellars is thought to date back to Saxon times. So that's around 410 AD to 1066. So that's a pretty long time ago, right? We're in 2021 right now. It's crazy. Sometimes that Saxon times are sometimes called like the Dark Ages or the early Middle Ages.
Wouldn't it suck if it was like
early Middle Age right now?
Wouldn't it suck if it was like your time, like if the Atom time, the era known as Atom time, was also known as the Dark Ages? Like, bummer, man.
I'm sure a lot of crap happened back then. So the structure eventually landed in the hands of the Portsmouth City Council. There were a few things that happened, like attempts at creating a hotel out of it in 2006, but that whole plan kind of fell through. Of course, the surrounding area has been updated. Many of the areas of the actual building have been modernized, so it doesn't necessarily scream, I existed in the Middle Ages or whatever, It's lost its medieval appeal. It just looks like a house now. If you look it up, we'll post stuff later, but it just looks like a house. It's a cute house, but it's just a house. With its extensive history and all the structural change, it's bound to stir up some ghostly history. And it seems like that's kind of the thing that happens, right? You start messing with the building, you start fixing things, renovating things, and then the ghosts start popping up. Weird stuff starts happening.
Stop changing stuff.
Understandably, the structure is home to its own menagerie of ghosts. It's existed for over 1,000 years, right? No.
Significantly longer. Like 2,000 years. You said it was 40 AD, right?
The land, but the building
gotcha.
is like 1060 or something like that. So almost 1,000 years. Since I've watched The Conjuring 2 last night, I'm going to start with the resident ghost nun that seems to inhabit this place, right?
Interesting.
So she's known as the Red Nun, and there's a nun that's been seen with her hands dripping in blood. She's seen outside the attic bedroom, above what's known as the paneled room, which I'll tell you about later. She's said to be looking down the staircase that leads from the attic. And the room at the top of those stairs is popularly called Noah's Ark for some fucking reason. The room was said to be one that was used for secret abortions.
Wow.
And romantic rendezvous between nuns and priests. So
this is the red nun?
Yeah.
Not the anaconda don't want nun?
God damn it.
Sorry, I was working on that.
That was a good one.
I was working on that for a minute.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, all of this is obviously conjecture. You never know what actually went on back then.
I'm glowing from that joke. I'm so proud of myself right now.
The red nun is known to scare people away from this particular room. And then there is also a choir of nuns. So, Leonard Metcalf, who used to live in the home before his death in 1958, claimed that he would occasionally see what he described to be a choir of nuns. He would see them crossing the manor's hall at midnight, and they would be chanting, and according to Metcalf, they would be chanting to a clear sound of music. They're probably like, the hills are alive with the sound of music.
Sound of music about nuns? I haven't seen it in a minute.
Honestly, I don't even remember. I just know that that's one song that's in that movie.
That's a song from a movie about songs.
Isn't that one of the songs, too, is the French song where they sing about saying goodbye, goodnight?
I have no idea.
I don't know. I haven't seen that movie since I was a child. And I am turning 32 in a couple days, and I'm just like,
I'm trying to picture this choir of nuns. Oh yeah, 5 days. I'm trying to picture this choir of nuns singing something nice and like soothing rather than something terrifying.
I don't think it's gonna sound like anything from Midnight Mass. I think it's one of those like chanting things like monks chant. That's what I imagined.
Stop it.
Oh my God.
Hopefully not.
They're singing the theme song from Sephiroth, just like...
That would be fucking... that would be sweet.
Anyway, continuing on, his family never believed him about all the stuff that he was seeing. And what no one, not even Metcalf, knew that was that there was a sisterhood of Saint Mary the Virgin that visited the home, that kind of stayed in the home in the mid-1800s. So the fact that he saw that, they believe, is connected. And he had no idea that that existed. So it's like, this has to mean something. Instead of a lady in white that wanders around this house, there is what's known as the lady in violet. A violet dress, that is, not some Bermuda shorts and a t-shirt. Thomas Parr used to live in the manor when one night he woke up to an apparition at the foot of his bed, which is some basic bitch haunting, if you ask me. Like,
put some effort into it. That's just lazy.
Put effort into it, Change it up. Do something creepy, like the bent neck lady, right? Float above my bed, freaking me out, really, really scary, like. Because foot of your bed, everybody does that. Come on, change it up. It's a generic move. What was particularly interesting about this apparition was that it was his cousin. It was the ghost of his cousin that had died in 1917, and she was dressed in a floor-length violet dress. She spoke to him. And she was friendly, she was matter-of-fact, and I think it's kind of expected when they're your family member, right? They're just there to tell you something.
Right.
But she told him of her recent religious experiences and about having met other family members that had passed.
Her recent religious experiences, now that she's dead.
Yeah. It's probably, I just imagine it's her telling him, like, I've been to heaven, or I've been, this is what I experienced after I died. That type of thing. That's what I imagine their conversation was about. Then she told him, well, Tommy dear, it's in a British accent, right? But, well, Tommy dear, I must leave you now as we're waiting to receive Aunt Em.
That's pretty fucked up. Call Aunt Em and let her know there's a hit out on her.
When he woke up the next morning, he received a telegram giving him news that his Aunt Em had passed in the night. Which is, it gives me chills just like thinking about it, right? This guy has this experience in the middle of the night. He sees this ghost of someone who'd already passed away, and they bring up like, oh, well, someone else is coming, so I gotta go. And then he wakes up and it's like, what the fuck? Oh my God.
Because you could probably convince yourself in the morning that it was just a dream or something like that. But then when something like that happens,
Yes.
where it kind of confirms that it actually did happen, or even if it was a dream that was prophetic, yeah, that's terrifying.
So the lady in the violet dress is still seen around the manor. She's said to be a happy and nonchalant kind of spirit. Supposedly, she strikes up conversations with visitors like she's just another one of the meat suits. And then she just suddenly disappears right before your eyes.
Oops, gotta go. Auntie M's calling.
Shut up. Wouldn't that be scary though if someone's like, oh no, I gotta meet so-and-so. And then you're like, wait, what the fuck? And then you, I don't know, wake up the next day or get a phone call later. And it's like, what? You know, it's terrifying. There are a couple haunted rooms within the manor, of course. The blue room was where Parr's elderly relative experienced something strange, not necessarily ghost-like, but kind of creepy. She was always careful to lock her door at night due to her fear of break-ins and burglars. When she woke up one morning, her door was actually unlocked and open. So it's either real spooky.
That's terrifying.
Or she's real forgetful.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So it could be one or the other. You never know. God knows I forget everything.
It's one thing to leave your door unlocked. It's another one to leave your door open. You know, I just feel like most people, even if they are forgetful, would know to close the door. It's kind of like second nature. If you see the door is open, you just walk over and close it.
Yeah. Okay, so now let me tell you about the paneled room.
Is this the playroom?
Where you put your Xbox and stuff.
Oh, wow. You totally just quoted that terrible, terrible, shitty movie.
50 Shades. Is that what you were quoting?
I mean, I was making a reference to it. Yeah, I didn't know we were going to recite the whole fucking thing to each other.
Okay. Anyway, so this room is said to be the most ghastly of ghostly rooms. And in this room, Metcalf was using it as a bedroom. He was using his wash basin one day, because back in the day, you used a big bowl full of water in it, and that was like your thing that you washed your face with. You did all this stuff. He probably had his face in the water bowl or something, you know, like rinsing off or whatever. And I imagine that because he was really shocked to feel a hand on his shoulder. And I imagine him whipping his head out of the water bowl, water going everywhere, and he turns around real quick, like something out of a horror movie, right?
Plus, when you come out of the water basin, or the wash basin, or whatever it's called, and you had water on your face, you have to, like, get the water off of your mouth, so you have to make that sound, like, "Puh!" You know? Like the scared getting the water off your face noise, that had to happen.
How do you know what that sound is? Have you done it?
I don't know. Maybe it's just built into my DNA.
But yeah, so he spun around real quick, and when he did so, he found no one there, which is super creepy. So I don't know about you, but if someone walks in and touches me, even if I'm not in a haunted house, I freak out. If I hear someone walking up to me behind me really fast, I freak out. So it's safe to say I freak out at everything.
It's very commonplace in this home for myself or my mom when she's like approaching Robin.
Oh yeah.
We just announce ourselves so we don't scare her. Cause no matter how heavy footed you are, you're just like, I'm coming in the room. I'm not trying to scare you.
Spooky mom, a lot of the time when she comes in, she's like, hi, I'm coming in. I'm not trying to scare you.
And half the time that scares her. She's just like, "Bah!"
I go,
"Bah!" Just spits water everywhere.
No, okay. So he was real shocked when he felt this hand on his shoulder. Turn around, no one there. Others claim to feel like an oppressive air in the room, like it's kind of suffocating. Others feel an urge to straight up run out of there. When the structure was used as a youth hostel, the warden and his wife reported feeling an unexplained fear of that particular room. So it's just a room that people are kind of scared to go into. All right, so now for the legend of Reckless Roddy.
Reckless Roddy?
Yep. According to legends, Reckless Roddy existed in the Middle Ages. There was a couple of newlyweds that arrived to stay at Whimmering Manor. What?
I just can't wait to meet Reckless Roddy. I just imagine he's going to pull up on a fucking dirt bike with his name on a jacket. Like, I'm Reckless Roddy. And then he starts doing fucking donuts.
In the Middle Ages?
Yeah. Hell yeah.
All right.
He's reckless. Why not?
Soon after, fuck.
He's a time traveler.
Soon
He doesn't care what he does.
Shut up!
Space-time continuum. He's Reckless Roddy.
Soon after their arrival, the husband was called away for some particular reason, and he left his wife behind. Sir Roderick of Porchester, the very reckless Roddy of this story, was a bit of a stalker. So he kind of became obsessed with her. And he found out she was left alone. And what does he decide to do? He wants to seduce her. He wants a piece of that ass, right? So while he's... What?
I just love the phrase, that's all.
So while he's trying to do this...
It just fits Reckless Roddy so well. I want a piece of that ass.
Damn it!
Fucking does some more donuts.
God damn
He's doing
it.
donuts on his horse, like, yeah! Like, leaning as hard as he can.
So while he's trying to do this, her husband comes home, and he is pissed. So he comes home just in time, chases Roddy out, and kills him just as he's trying to mount his horse.
Wow.
So this Roderick person bleeds out on the ground right in front of the manor. Gets shanked with a sword, bleeds out right there. Don't stalk people, dude. Not cool. From this legend continues that now whenever a newlywed couple stays at the manor, they hear Reckless Roddy's horse galloping down the lane. Why are you laughing?
I think it's a great legend. I can hear Reckless Roddy right now, like, woo! Let me get a piece of that ass!
They don't... Like, you gotta think of it in middle ages, right? Medieval times. I don't know. You gotta think of, like, what is... I need thy ass.
No, Reckless Roddy 100% talks in 20th century slang.
Oh, God, I hate you. Okay. Anyway, so you can hear his horse galloping down the lane. Leonard Metcalf, the one who saw the choir of nuns, had never heard of the legend prior to having his experience with the ghostly horse himself. So apparently, he got married after World War II. They're newlyweds. And one night, they're awakened around 2 a.m. to the sound of a horse galloping down the lane. And no horse was actually there. Another person, a Mr. E. Jones, I wanted so badly to say Nigma. But it's Jones. Mr. Enigma.
Yeah, I got you.
Edward Nigma.
When you said Jones, I wanted it to be James Earl. That's
James Earl. Oh, we got two different mindsets there.
We do.
You don't like that movie? I like that Batman movie. It's one of my favorites.
It's the 5th best Batman movie.
It's so bad, it's good.
Actually, let me take that back. It's the 6th best. There's 7. It's 6th on my list.
God damn it. Oh, okay. So, Jones claimed to have heard the sound of a horse his first night as acting warden of the manor. He was just a dude, though. He wasn't a newlywed. So, horses probably don't discriminate. They're just like, yeah, I'll gallop whenever you fucking want.
No. Reckless Roddy doesn't discriminate. He wants a piece of that ass regardless.
What the fuck? Okay. All right. Whatever. Ghost hunts over the years have claimed to have sighted apparitions and recorded EVPs. There's pictures of the usual floating orb. Psychics and mediums claim there are numerous ghosts and spirits within the manor, about 18 to 20 of them, like a lot of different spirits, having existed for almost 1,000 years. I expect, at least 10. A lot of stuff happens to a house in 1,000 years, right?
It's true. It's a very long time.
Then there's my least favorite thing, disembodied children's laughter and running. I just imagine just the stomping of little tiny feet, right? Running down the hall. Fuck that. The occasional baby crying, disembodied voices and singing. Lots of general things that you'd hear in life, but there's just no one there making these sounds. So it's kind of creepy. Other ghostly occurrences include a tall shadow man that supposedly shoves and pushes people.
That's Scary.
There are ghosts that are seen descending the main staircase. There's a ghost monk. There's ghost animals. There's a Scottish terrier and a black cat. The building was actually placed on the market in 2010 for sale, right? For the fairly average price for Las Vegas real estate right now, anyway, of £375,000, also known as $600,000.
I was gonna say, that's a lot more dollars.
So, I mean, that is, you can't even buy a really nice house out here for $600,000 right now. It's fuck nuts, okay? So nothing too crazy for our real estate right now. It is currently in the hands of the Whimmering Manor Trust, which is a volunteer institution hoping to fully restore the house, a feat that will probably cost over £500,000.
Wow.
That's a lot of money. If you're not one to be able to purchase a haunted house, you'll be happy to know that you can actually set up ghost hunts there if you like. Join some ghost hunting tours. There are a lot of different companies that offer investigation tours there. Tickets are currently sold out at a lot of them because I looked through a few, and a lot of the ghost hunt websites I went to had tours already sold out. I don't know. And these tours are like for November 6th, something, a couple weeks down the way. But I bet they sell out a month in advance or something. It's probably because it's Halloween time, right? It's spooky season. So people are like, gotta hit up them ghosts. So maybe wait till after all this is done. No, and people aren't all hyped up about ghosts and stuff like that. And maybe Christmas. Skip Christmas. There's ghosts of Christmas past and shit. I don't know.
If you go, make sure you take a leather jacket with rhinestones spelling out Reckless Roddy on the back of it.
But yeah, if you do go, or you go on a ghost tour or something like that, let us know. We'd be really interested to hear your experiences with it, because we probably won't ever get the opportunity to go there.
I would love to go. In fact, let me retract my previous statement. It doesn't need to be a leather jacket. I'm actually thinking Reckless Roddy had a jean jacket vibe, but definitely rhinestones.
I'm imagining the guy from Rocky Horror Picture Show.
I'm 100% imagining a mixture of two people: Disco Stew from The Simpsons and Hot Rod from the movie Hot Rod. That's who Reckless Roddy is to me.
Oh my god. I just am imagining Rod. It's stupid. He's like, I'm a daredevil. All right.
My name is Reckless Roddy, and I like to party. So, all right, good stuff, Robin. Solid topic. I hope one day we can go see this. But anyone who actually can go see it, if you do, loop us and let us know. We'd love to hear about it. So, I think that's everything for Robin's topics. We're going to take our normal commercial break, and when we come back on the other side, we're going to get my topic. So, here we go with the commercials.
Hello from the other side.
Indeed. So, since this is the last topic episode that we'll release during Spooktober,
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So
okay.
This is coming out on the 26th.
Good topic for me to end on then.
Yeah. So the next topic episode comes out November 2nd. We're a bit removed from Halloween, so I mean we'll probably. It's fucking called Scaryish. We'll probably still do Spookvember, but Spookvember. Anyways, I wanted to make sure to cover a topic that was requested by the patrons since they were so kind to vote. And like I mentioned, the third highest voted was a disaster, whether it be man-made or a natural disaster.
You're a natural disaster.
Thank you. And even though I had planned on doing Disaster December, which I'm still planning on doing, there are plenty of disasters out there to cover. It's a very rich vein to tap into. They're mostly terrifying, so...
They're horrifying.
They really are. So I decided I wanted to go with one that was fairly notable, fairly famous, or infamous if that's how you prefer to take it, but something that I've heard of but didn't know a lot about, because it'll be fun to cover it because I can learn, and that's always fun to do. So I present to you, dear listener, the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. So one nice thing about covering this topic right away is I don't have to describe where or when it takes place.
San Francisco.
In 1906. But in case you need the specifics, the 1906 San Francisco earthquake struck in San Francisco, California on Wednesday, April 18th of 1906.
Y'all remember 1906, right?
I was going to do that, and it's like, y'all remember 1906, right? There was an earthquake. Moving on. So...
What the fuck?
California's coastline, while very, very beautiful, is a hotbed of seismic activity. It basically always has been. This is because our planet is essentially a giant version of Humpty Dumpty.
Well, I mean,
so,
everything's on a bunch of tectonic plates.
And let me describe that. So when our alien overlords were making the shell that would become known as Earth, they dropped it, and it shattered into 7 different pieces. Now, rather than making a new planet, they're like, fuck it, just glue it back together, because they're lazy. So each piece, I hope they're not listening like we're going to abduct this guy and probe the shit out of him. So each piece is a unique shape, and the seams where they once were one whole piece are cracked.
You gotta think, like, we started as Pangea, right? We started as one big continent, and then those tectonic plates...
That's the land masses, though. So the tectonic plates still existed.
They split up because those tectonic plates moved and changed. And because it's changed over time, now our fucking world looks completely different.
And in a million years, it'll look even more different. So anyways, I'm going to get back to describing these tectonic plates for everyone.
There's 2 continents that are coming closer and closer together.
These 7 pieces that have been glued back together, essentially imagine an orb that you dropped, it cracked. You're like, shit, mom and dad are going to find out. So you take out the glue and you glue it back together. It looks fine, but there's still like ridges where that spot broke. Like the individual pieces are known as plates. There's the African, the Antarctic, the Eurasian, the Indo-Australian, the North American, the Pacific, and the South American. 2 of those plates meet on the west coast of the United States of America. That would be the Pacific and the North American plates. At that site where plates meet, that's called faults. Not just all the things that are wrong with me as a person, it's also what you call where these plates meet. It's a constant reminder that our orb was dropped, basically.
And the one in California, or off the coast of California, is the San Andreas Fault, right?
Correct. So let me get to that. So faults are, for lack of a better term, the cracks that still are present between the plates. So it's not perfect. It's not like you're going to fall into the center of the Earth if you walk onto the fault, but there is essentially a divot. And because the plates move, this is where they rub together.
I find geology fascinating.
I do too. And I find it absolutely fascinating when you can just take your hands and like lay them flat and then like put your fingers together and go like...
Because that's how like a cricket?
That's how the plates work. Exactly, like a cricket. So the fault, like Robin mentioned, on the West Coast in particular we're talking about, of the United States of America, is known as the San Andreas Fault. Most of us probably know this already. I'm just making sure everyone's on the same page.
Because there's a rock movie about it.
We absolutely know. Dwayne Johnson made that wonderful documentary by the same name where he punches the land masses into submission. And it worked very well.
Still he does.
So there are lots of faults all over the world, not just where plates meet, but those are the big ones. And they all behave in different ways. Some of them just smash into each other like 2 corgis bumping chests.
But it's not their fault. It's not their fault. Nature made them that way.
Okay.
These faults are not their fault. Get it? God.
Oh, it's not their fault?
Yes.
I'm taking it out.
Fuck you. It's a good joke. You're stupid fucking... God. I don't know. Your anaconda don't want them.
My joke's hilarious.
Fuck you. Stupid bitch.
Lean away from me. You're getting dangerously close right now. All right. So there are faults all over the world, not just where plates meet. Like I mentioned, sometimes they smash into each other. When that happens, one typically sinks into the other one. And when that happens,
it doesn't always happen.
One of the plates rises and you get things called mountains. That's where that comes from. In other situations, for faults that are not, essentially tectonic plates, one plate can move while the other one remains stationary. And when it moves, that friction is energy releasing. That energy releasing causes the ground to shake, and that's known as an earthquake. And I'm glad that we're all on the same page now because we can get specifically to the San Andreas Fault, which runs for around 750 miles through California. It's a very large portion of the state that is literally at ground zero for some serious seismic activity. The San Andreas Fault has plates where they're both moving and they're moving in opposite directions, which means it's just going to be constant seismic activity, essentially. Whether or not it's going to be catastrophic seismic activity, not necessarily, but there are just constant quakes that are happening there. So sometimes plates moving in opposite directions cause something pretty terrible to happen. And it can cause substantial devastation. And that is exactly what took place on Wednesday, April 18th of 1906. San Francisco at the time wasn't the massive metropolis as it is today, but it was still an incredibly large town. Seeing some pictures of San Francisco in 1906 is absolutely stunning how big it was. And it wasn't just large, it was very crowded, similar to present day San Francisco. A man named Joaquin Miller spoke of the town at the time when remembering this particular incident. He stated, quote, "I don't see why we have to crowd into one little plot of land. Houses piled on top of houses. 10 stories built as if we were walled in like Babel of old, with such swift transportation where everybody came and went. There is no sense in piling house on house, putting our time going up and down stairs."
Oh, poor Joaquin.
In his memories, he's basically stating, like, the city should have just expanded outwards instead of growing up. Like, we have these things like automobiles now, because in 1906, automobiles were a thing. They weren't as widespread. Plus, people could ride horses where they needed to go. Like, why should we try and climb stairs? Fuck stairs. Like, let's just move side to side. It's way easier. And that was what Joaquin thought.
Joaquin, now we have skyscrapers. They literally scrape the sky.
Joaquin would walk into an elevator and be like, "This is what I'm fucking talking about." He'd be so happy. But for me, it's hard to picture high rises in 1906, but they were certainly quite a few. And the morning of April 18th was normal in most aspects. The sun was coming up on what seemed like another day for people to try and make their fortune, because the reason San Francisco existed in the first place
the gold rush?
is the gold rush. That's where the 49ers,
okay.
the team, the San Francisco 49ers come from, is the 49ers were people that were coming out west to try and find gold. And indeed, there was a lot of gold to be found. And then at 5:12 a.m., everything changed when the shaking started. Now, I've been in an earthquake before. Nothing like this. Nothing like what Ralph, spooky friend Ralph, talked about on his most recent appearance on the show. So the earthquake that I was in technically took place in 2019. I think it was like July 5th of 2019. And it was a 7.1 magnitude earthquake that was, the focal point was in Ridgecrest, California, about 200 miles away from Las Vegas. And it shook enough that the entire valley of Las Vegas felt it. The Paris hotel actually had to close down the Eiffel Tower attraction because it was swaying and it scared the shit out of a bunch of tourists.
Oh my lord.
Most events basically came to a stop until everyone's like, is everything good? Pools all over the valley looked like wave pools. It certainly happened with ours.
I wish we would have gone outside and looked.
And like, we were in our loft and I had my foot on the ground and we're on our second floor and I could feel the floor shaking. And I told Robin, can you feel that? She couldn't at first.
I couldn't feel it. Well, my feet were on the floor. I was sitting on the couch, just like sitting on the couch. But then I looked over at our window and our blinds were shaking back and forth. I was like, what the fuck is going on?
So she put her feet on the floor. She could notice it. And really quickly, it went from this idea of, oh, that's neat, to shit, do I need to try and like keep stuff from falling over? Because the TVs were swaying as the intensity picked up, and it lasted like 30 seconds or so. So out near the epicenter, though, the ground literally cracked apart. Portions of the landscape rose up. Other parts fell away. The roads were cracked, shifted. Some of them had to be closed for repairs. I mean, it was pretty bad off. And that was a 7.1. So something I think is very worth noting. And if you listen to anything I say, listen to this and then the rest of the episode. Pay attention. What the fuck? But something to keep in mind when you hear about a quake's magnitude, and I did not realize this until tonight, each full number is 33 times more powerful than the previous.
It's a very specific number.
So if there was a 7.1 that hit us, an 8.1 would have been 33 times worse. The amount of energy release, the amount of shaking, the amount of devastation, essentially, is 33 times. So when you hear 7.1, you're like, oh, well, that's almost 8. It's got to be really bad, you know? It's like, no. Essentially, every 10th of a point goes up 3.3 times more powerful, which is significantly worse, you know?
Yeah.
Like a 7.2 could legitimately have been devastating. A 7.3 could have been something that the city would have had, like, actual damage from.
We've had an earthquake before that split our freeways. I've only been living here for maybe 12 years. And I'd never seen that before. That's the only time that happened.
We were flying out of Las Vegas. We landed and we found out that an earthquake happened after we took off. And the freeway split and
it's a really
separated
small freeway.
To the point where they had to shut down the freeway. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of scary when you think about how powerful an earthquake is. So I'm letting you know that something that is an 8.0 compared to a 7.0 is 33 times more powerful and just absolutely devastating. So that said, the shaking started at 5:12 a.m. again on April 18th, 1906. And the shaking was that of a 7.9 magnitude earthquake, which is indeed catastrophic. And rather than read you a description from an article I found somewhere, I decided to find some actual eyewitness accounts from the Museum of San Francisco, which is actually online. They have a bunch of different eyewitness accounts for what happened. A man named G.A. Raymond was asleep in the Palace Hotel. Spoiler alert, the Palace Hotel, while very famous for housing some of the most famous people of the day, would be destroyed in the 1906 earthquake. Here is his description of the event. Quote, and I think this starts out like every story from 1906 should start out in San Francisco. Quote, I had $600 in gold under my pillow. I awoke as I was thrown out of bed. Attempting to walk, the floor shook so that I fell. I grabbed my clothing and rushed down into the office where dozens were already congregated. Suddenly the lights went out and everyone rushed for the door. Outside, I witnessed a sight that I never want to see again. It was dawn and light. I looked up. The air was filled with falling stones. People around me were crushed to death on all sides. All around the huge buildings were shaking and waving. Every moment there were reports like 100 cannons going off at one time. Then streams of fire would shoot out and other reports followed. I asked a man standing next to me what happened. Before he could answer, 1,000 bricks fell on him and he was killed.
Oh my God.
This part's a little rude. A woman threw her arms around my neck. I pushed her away and fled. So this chick's like, save me. He's like, get off me, bitch. And he ran.
Get off me, bitch.
All around me, buildings were rocking and flames shooting. As I ran, people on all sides were crying, praying, and calling for help.
It's because gas lines are starting to break and stuff like that, right?
Yep. I thought the end of the world had come. His statement is really long and harrowing. He finds a priest, and the priest is like, we have to get to a boat. And they all run to a boat, and there's like 10,000 people trying to get on the boats. And he describes the ways in which people kind of abandon all like decorum and just ripped each other apart trying to get on these boats. Yeah, he said that like men, women, and children weren't spared. Like clothing and flesh was ripped off the bone from people's bare hands just trying to get on these boats. I imagine
it's like Titanic. When that guy, have you ever seen Titanic?
Yes.
Okay, when that guy gets onto the life boat or whatever, because he takes someone else's kid and gets onto the boat like an asshole.
Billy Zane?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it would have been actually even that organized. Like, this is full-blown panic because at the time, the whole world is still shaking violently. And that violent shaking could be felt from Eureka, California to Salinas, California. In case you didn't know how far apart that is.
I don't.
It's 320 miles apart.
Yeah, what?
For my friends back home in Indiana that might be listening to this, from the northernmost part of the state of Indiana to the southernmost border, it's 270 miles. It's a 4-hour drive. Add 50 additional miles to that, and that entire region would have been shaking to put the fear of God into you. That's how bad this earthquake was. When you think about how long an event like that lasts, you probably think it's only a few seconds. And terrifying moments have a way of dragging on to seem relatively like an eternity. The main shock rocked this region for a total of 42 seconds. And I mean, I know it's all relative. Like if you're listening to your favorite song and someone says you only get to listen to 42 seconds of it, it seems far too short, you know? But if you were to grab a hot pan off the stove, 42 seconds would be absolutely unbearable. And for those folks on this day, they spent 42 seconds living through the utter collapse of the city of San Francisco around them. And here's the thing, is that when it stopped shaking, it certainly wasn't over. Because the other thing that can happen during an earthquake, based on the composition of the earth, shaking, is called soil liquefaction. We test for this now before we build somewhere to see whether or not the composition could be disrupted by the fact that all this energy would be released from an earthquake.
Because when the dirt has enough vibration in it, it turns into a fluid.
Correct. And it will not recover once the shaking is stopped. Basically, it's lost all ability to support anything on top of it, which is where quite a few buildings were built in the city of San Francisco. So buildings that may have survived the shaking were suddenly on ground that was giving way entirely. So even if the shaking had stopped, the buildings were still collapsing over a large portion of the city. When the shaking was finally over, then the people had to deal with an even more dangerous event, the fire. Gas mains had ruptured during the quake, and gas ignited in many cases, and spouts of flame were just shooting into the city. That's what G.A. Raymond was talking about when he said he felt like the world was coming to an end, because certain parts of the city were rising, other ones were sinking into the ground. I read this account of someone trying to run to the docks, and like some of the farmers nearby had their farms break apart, and livestock was just running terrified through the city, and a huge chasm opened up, and this guy saw a herd of cows just run off a cliff that hadn't existed previously. And he like peeked over to see where they were, and he couldn't even see the bottom of it. He just knew they were gone. Like the earth swallowed them. It's absolutely terrifying stuff. So the buildings and the debris made perfect kindling for fires raging out of control all over the city. And the thing that was the worst about it is the fire stations had trouble responding to any of these events because they themselves had been crippled by the earthquake. The fire chief of San Francisco was hurt during the earthquake, and he died hours after it ended.
God.
So someone else had to step in, and they requested the U.S. Navy and any additional help they could get from nearby to show up and help them rescue survivors, to not just rescue survivors, but to help them fight the fires, to bring physicians because they knew they were going to need people to help. It was this massive undertaking once the shaking stopped to try and prevent further damage. The Navy, combined with local fire departments and a bunch of volunteers, were able to extinguish the fire near the waterfront. And when they did that, they were able to save several important structures like the utility, the electric utility that was providing power to the outlying sections of the city that hadn't lost it, which is where they were setting up essentially makeshift hospitals to treat people. So medical staff were brought in from all over, and they established a presence in whatever buildings they could to try and treat the wounded. And the power plants being saved was critically important. The other sections of the city, though, they burned. And the fires burned all over, essentially until they grew into one massive fire. It was no longer isolated fires. They sort of joined forces. And there's a picture that's just far too wide because it's panoramic. And you know how they took it? It was 200 yards in the sky. They took a panoramic that was just over the bay with a kite. They strapped a camera to a kite, and they have these amazing pictures.
Look at this ingenuity.
So I can't post them because they're massive panoramics. They're like, if you want like dimensions, it's like 5620 by 2840. You know, they're huge. So if you ever want to Google these, they're amazing. I will post very good pictures from this on our Instagram as well. But these ones in particular basically show the city of San Francisco right after the earthquake. And there's just a line of fires as long as the city. And that fire is essentially marching forward across it. And firefighters were trying everything they could to put out this fire before it consumed the entire city. They would succeed in putting out one fire and then realize that the fire had wrapped around them in different ways and have to abandon the position they were in just to watch that spot they had just doused again be caught in flame. A man named Jack London, who had survived the destruction, fled the city and went out onto the bay because he had a boat. He watched this all night, and this is what he had to say, quote, "By Wednesday afternoon, inside of 12 hours, half the heart of the city was gone. At that time, I watched the vast conflagration from out on the bay. It was dead calm. Not a flicker of wind stirred. Yet from every side, wind was pouring upon the city. East, west, north, and south, strong winds were blowing upon the doomed city. The heated air rising made an enormous suck. Thus did the fire of itself build its colossal chimney through the atmosphere. Wow. Day and night, this dead calm continues. There's no wind anywhere else. And yet, near the flames, the wind was half a gale. So mighty was the suck."
Is there a reason why? Just because of the fire, it creates its own current?
First of all, my joke, that sucks.
Oh my...
But yes, that's exactly why. So a gale, for reference, is a nautical term used to describe wind that blows between 40 and 55 miles per hour. It's a very powerful wind. He said it was half a gale, which puts it between 20 and 25 miles an hour, roughly. So the fire itself was churning in air to basically breathe and grow. And because it was this massive column of fire and the superheated air above it, it let the smoke essentially rise up into the atmosphere while it kept just pulling in more and more air to basically consume the entire city. And the local firefighters, with the support of the U.S. Navy and countless others, battled this fire for 5 days. And during that time, limited amounts of aftershocks were also felt. And even though they were not sizable, as they would normally be expected to be after a catastrophic earthquake, standing on debris and uneven ground while the ground shakes is treacherous at all times, you know? Around 250 miles north of the city, an aftershock of 6.7 hit Eureka, California 5 days after the initial one and caused even more devastation. As for San Francisco, the firefighters saved what they could from the fire, but the city was basically just a giant inferno, and it made its way across what had survived this earthquake, sweeping from one side to the other. There's another unbelievable panoramic picture of after the fire is out, just showing a smoldering ruin of San Francisco. Like, everything is burned. It's insane. Portions of the city did get saved, though, because the guy who was the interim fire chief, when he called for the U.S. Navy, he told him, bring dynamite.
What?
Like, it's the only way we're going to stop the fire is to destroy what's in its path so it can't advance. So they did, and they were setting off.
And it worked?
They were setting off dynamite all over the city for 5 days, and it had a limited amount of success. So they did manage to save portions of the city.
Fire can jump
very easily, especially with the wind that was blowing it like it was. So they were trying to do as much as they could to basically destroy the path that the fire could get through and clear as much debris as possible. But there's only so much you can do. The earthquake was so powerful that seismographs along the East Coast, like New York, registered the earthquake 19 minutes after it had struck. So even on the other side of the United States, people knew something cataclysmic had taken place somewhere else in the world. Like, you just look at a reading and you say, that's not normal. Somewhere on this planet, something horrible just happened to a lot of people. When the shaking had stopped and the fires had finally gone out 5 days later, 80% of San Francisco no longer existed.
What?
80% of San Francisco had been wiped off the map. That's how severe the earthquake and the fire was. The population of San Francisco on April 18th, before this started, was 410,000 people. So that's a large city, you know?
Yeah.
That's roughly 2/3 the size of Vegas now.
Wow.
That's how many people lived there in 1906. Roughly 300,000 of them were homeless by April 23rd. So that's 3/4 of their population no longer had homes. Tents were erected all over the surrounding countryside, and an exact death toll is unknown, but after reviewing all of the records in 2005 with historians, there was a council that voted unanimously to declare the official death toll of 3,000 people.
Wow.
189 deaths took place outside of San Francisco and the neighboring regions away from the epicenter. Donations, when people realized what had happened, came in from all over the world. A total of $5 million in 1906 was donated from individuals and corporations all over, from like the US, London, and Canada. At the time, business owners and politicians really were trying to downplay the severity of the earthquake because they were afraid that if they provided an accurate representation of the almost total destruction of San Francisco, investment would vanish for the development and, at this point, now the rebuilding of San Francisco and other nearby cities. People would think it was too volatile. They built on a fault, and this could happen again, and they were afraid essentially that this would kill off the livelihood of 500,000 people who had just watched their city be utterly destroyed. So the governor of California highlighted the need to rebuild immediately and talked about how essential the city was because there was money there to be made. Everyone knew there was gold in San Francisco and the surrounding mountains. They needed to get the city back up and running immediately, and that was the focus. Not the tragedy of the disaster, but the rebuilding effort. And it's not surprising that they downplayed how bad it was, because there are multiple estimates all over the internet, but one of the most frequently reported numbers by actual tax assessors and people that, insurance assessors and things like that, estimates that the damage cost $400 million in 1906. So today, that would mean it was $12.2 billion worth of damage.
Wow.
That's insane. And again, if you can't fathom the difference between a million and a billion is 1,000 millions. That's how many millions it takes to get to a billion with a B. And there was $12.2 billion worth of damage. The San Francisco earthquake of 1906 is one of the deadliest earthquakes in U.S. history, and it is the deadliest natural disaster in the history of California. It is one of the costliest natural disasters in U.S. history as well. However, that list has gotten ridiculously stacked at the top of it from devastating hurricanes, all of which have occurred within my lifetime on that list. It's insane how much money hurricanes have cost the United States of America as far as disaster relief because they are such devastating things. As an aside, I can't wait to cover some more hurricanes because they're one of my favorite natural disasters. I was a huge weather nerd as a kid. And it is shocking that in the 90s growing up, they used to say a Category 5 hurricane happens once every 10 years. That was the rule of thumb. A catastrophic hurricane once every 10 years. We get them all the fucking time now.
Wow.
It was shocking to scroll through that list and be like, I forgot about some of these because they happen so frequently. But back to the earthquake. So I'm going to wrap this up here. For the individuals in San Francisco in 1906 that survived and had money in the bank and immediately wanted to rebuild because they knew it was vital for them to get rebuilt. And on top of that, if you're a prospector or you have a prospecting company and everyone has been wiped out, the person that gets back on their feet first are the people that are going to have essentially the mountain to themselves and all that gold that's up there. Instead of having everyone constantly up there fighting for position, now everyone's been reset to zero, you know?
Yeah.
So the sooner you get back on your feet, the more opportunity there is for money to be made. So if you had money in the bank and you wanted to start rebuilding right away, you had to wait 7 to 10 days for a withdrawal from a local bank. And why, you ask? Is it because the banks burned to the ground? Well, kind of. The banks in the city had almost all burnt to the ground, but many of them had state-of-the-art vaults that were indeed fireproof. So they let people know your money is going to be safe in there. The waiting period of 7 to 10 days is so that the vault could cool down from the scalding temperatures from being at the center of the inferno for 5 days. And interestingly enough, the Bank of Italy had its money evacuated from its bank right after the earthquake, but before the fire could claim it. So they basically had all of their assets ready to go. And although the branches burned to the ground, they set up makeshift stations around the city for the Bank of Italy so customers could come get their money immediately after the disaster. They knew if anyone needed access to their money, they could get it. Like, that was just brilliant foresight by them, and also really risky, because if they evacuated the money from the safe and then the money got burnt up, the money was gone, you know?
Yeah, right.
Their members' deposits would have vanished overnight. It's stated, too, that the president of the Bank of Italy paid for 2 ships to bring lumber from Washington and Oregon to help with the immediate rebuilding efforts, which it did. And I think that's really fucking cool. It's a really fascinating fact that I didn't know before I looked into this. And in case you're hearing that and you're like, damn, I want to become a member of the Bank of Italy because that's super cool, I should tell you as an FYI, they renamed themselves in 1929. They became and are currently known as the Bank of America.
Get the fuck out.
That's exactly who they are.
Get the fuck out.
100% true. So,
Holy
fascinating story about a financial institution basically risking your money to make sure you'd have money after a disaster. And then the president of the bank making sure that some lumber would be there so people could start rebuilding immediately.
Get out.
I thought it was super fascinating. So, and for anyone interested in when that fault might pop off again next, the San Andreas Fault, in 2006, there was a significant scientific study performed on the fault in various different ways, and they concluded the likelihood that the tension that was currently present in the fault had built to the point where there was an impending quake of a minimum magnitude of 7.0 that was likely to occur in the near future, possibly the very near future. This time, more likely to be on the southern part of the fault, since the northern part had released, I think, in like 1840, and of course in 1906, like we're talking about right now. So imagine your hands being pressed together. We're going to do this thing again. And you're sliding one direction, sliding one the other way, okay? Seems pretty smooth. But imagine there's something sticky on your fingers that's preventing you from moving your hands.
Hot.
And the top portion of your fingers moves first, you know, like it's almost bent.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually it causes more tension on the southern portion, and then that one is set free from whatever friction was preventing it from moving.
I'm just imagining my thighs when they chafe.
That works too, if you want to imagine that. Basically, what I'm saying is because the top part released first, the bottom part is now more likely to release, and it is likely that it will be more violent than the previous release of energy. That said, there was a 7.1 that occurred 3 years ago that we talked about, and hopefully that relieved enough of the tension on the San Andreas Fault, which I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure the earthquake was on the fault specifically. But there was a 7.1 that happened, 3 years ago that we felt. Maybe that released enough tension where we don't have to get Dwayne Johnson to come and save everyone. But
he
doesn't
save everyone. He saves his family.
He saves every single person in that documentary. It's amazing.
You can do anything with family.
I hate you so fucking much.
What? That's what he
No. That's not what his character ever says.
Not what his character says. I'm talking about
Dom Toretto from Fast and the Furious. We all fucking get it, Robin. They hate each other in real life. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, Rock would not appreciate you quoting Vin Diesel when I'm trying to make a joke about how strong he is. So Anyways, that, my spooky friends, is the San Francisco earthquake of 1906. Certainly terrifying, especially reading some of the accounts where people are running out of buildings with fountains of fire shooting up from a sky that's rising and falling beneath their feet.
That's what I feel like when I eat spicy food.
I hate you. Oh my god, lame spicy food joke from Robin.
Fuck you.
Perfect way to wrap up the topic, but I hope you all enjoyed that. Thank you to the patrons who voted on the topics you would like to see. It is actually very helpful to be pointed in a specific direction, and then sometimes topics just jump out at you, and there's a lot of stuff I learned during this that I didn't know previously, and I'm very happy that I was able to find it. So
yes, give your local seismologists some love, your engineers that create those buildings so that they're safe during
so that they can shake but not collapse. I watched a video of someone who was at the top of that Eiffel Tower here in Vegas when the earthquake occurred, and it was swaying, and like the tour guide was like, everything's fine, and there's kids just screaming in the background. So we've come a long way with that sort of information. I almost did one that is from China in the 70s that I'll definitely cover in December, and I will say that the death total for that one, and it's very difficult to get accurate numbers from China, but that one has a death toll between 250,000 and 750,000 people.
Oof.
So I'll be covering that one in December, but either way.
Oh, are you doing a disaster December?
Yes, I've mentioned that like 90 times on this show.
All right.
So not this show, this episode in particular, but yeah. So, but yeah, I think that's everything we have for this particular episode. So thank you so much for listening. If you have a story, it does not have to be related to the two topics that we covered, but if they are, absolutely wonderful. Feel free to reach out to us. You can email storytime@scaryish.com or go to our website, scaryish.com, and click on Contact Us. Fill out that form. It comes directly to us. You can also hit us up on any of our social medias. Facebook is facebook.com/scarishpodcast. Twitter is @scarishpod, and Instagram is @scarishpodcast. Don't forget we have a Discord if you would like to find it. Go to scaryish.com. There's a ticker that just sort of like runs by like the news or ESPN. One of them says, join our Discord. You click on that and you go into an article. You can click on the button. It'll take you directly to our Discord. And we'd love to see you there too. So, fun stuff. Robin, for folks who would like to donate to us, how can they do so?
You can go to patreon.com/scaryish podcast. Be one of those people that help us vote for topics sometimes. Tiers start at $1. At $1, you get ad-free episodes, which you can't go wrong with.
Ad-free's the way to be.
If you're not into the monthly donation type thing, you can also go to coffee, ko-fi.com/scaryish podcast. And those are one-time donations. All your donations really help us keep the show going, so any help is absolutely appreciated.
Indeed. So thank you so much for everyone who listened to the episode. We appreciate you so much. And yeah, that's everything we got. So Robin, go ahead and sign us out.
Happy Halloween! And we'll talk to you guys later.
Happy Halloween. Keep on creeping on. We'll talk to you guys later.